And if everybody could mute themselves unless we're speaking, that way we'll reduce the feedback. Okay. All right. Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Township Board of Adjustment. Notice of this meeting has been published in the paper, posted on the township's website, as well as posted in the bulletin board in the township building, as well as the bulletin boards outside the doors to the municipal building. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast on the Montclair Township, Montclair Government YouTube channel, as well as TV 34. Information on how to participate in the meeting is provided on the webpage. It's also on the meeting agenda. So the first item on the agenda is the roll call. And Mr. Allen, Mr. Church.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fleischer?
Here.
Mr. McCullough?
Present.
Mr. Moore?
Present.
Mr. Simon is not here. Mr. Harrison?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Caulfield is excused. Ms. Gilmer has unfortunately resigned from the board. And Mr. Vieira.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. We have the minutes of the July 21st meeting. My only change to that is on page 7, where line 36, there is it's missing words at the end. It's we're consistent with the existing setbacks of the house. But that's okay.
We're consistent with the existing setbacks of the house. Got it.
Okay. Anyone else with any changes to those minutes? Someone want to move approval of the minutes with that change?
I move approval of the minutes as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, then we have the minutes of the August 4th meeting. Page 4. On line 7.
What page? Bill, what page?
Page 4.
Okay.
Okay. Line 7, where it says the condition of garage was 4 and had to be removed versus and must be replaced after that. And then on line 8, replace existing with prior. And line 12, the same change. Anyone else with any other changes to those minutes?
Move approval of the minutes as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then we have the resolution for the D'Alessandro property on North Willow Street. I don't have any changes to the resolution. Does anyone else have any changes?
Move approval of the minute of the resolution as submitted.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have the resolution for Belenkina property on New Street. I don't have any changes to that resolution. Does anyone else have any changes?
No.
Okay, someone want to move approval?
Approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a
Second.
second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then we have the resolution for the Bristow property on Llewellyn Road. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
Move approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then we have the Truxillo resolution on Gordonhurst Avenue. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes?
Move approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? And then we have the Byers resolution, Carolin Road. I don't have any changes, but my understanding with the people who voted, 2 people who voted in favor of the 1 variance would abstain on this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any changes to the resolution?
Move approval of the resolution as submitted.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
The next item on the agenda, which is application 2741 for 17 Godfrey Road, has been withdrawn.
Good.
Application 2739 for 21 Van Vleck Street, the Montclair Foundation has requested that it be carried to the September 22nd Board of Adjustment meeting. So the first item to be heard tonight, the first public hearing, is for application 2742, 63 Park Street, Montclair LLC. And Miss Lisa John Basta, I believe, is the attorney for this application. Paul Sayunis, I believe, is the architect. I've made them both panelists. So you can both unmute yourself, Ms. John Basta. If there's somebody else that you want me to who wants to present this evening, let me know and I will make them a panelist.
She's muted. She's muted right now.
Okay, Ms. John Basta, now you're unmuted.
Thank you. If you could promote Justin Osilio, he's our professional planner for tonight.
Okay,
And is Paul on yet?
I put Paul on. He's on.
Okay, great. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Lisa John Basta with the law firm Keyes, Shahinian and Jan Tomasi on behalf of the applicant, 63 Park Street Montclair LLC. The applicant is before the board this evening seeking preliminary and final site plan approval in connection with the subject property to renovate, reuse, and expand the former Red Cross building that's located thereon. The applicant proposes to convert the former office building into a mixed-use building, which is a permitted conditional use in the zone with residential and professional office buildings, professional office in a mixed-use building. We are seeking a D3 variance in order to deviate from a condition of a conditional use, that is to place residential on the first floor of the building where it's not permitted. We are additionally seeking a height variance as well as several bulk variances. As you'll hear in greater detail from our experts tonight, the majority of the variances that are necessitated are due to the existing topography of the property, which slopes 7 feet from the front to the rear. as well as the desire to preserve the existing structures located on the property. This property is located in the Walnut Street Potential Historic Resource Area, which has been identified as having potential historic value by your Historic Commission and identified in the township's historic element of the master plan. We did appear before the Historic Preservation Commission in advance of tonight's meeting, and they did provide a favorable recommendation to this board, which I'm sure you have in your packets and can review. Paul Sionis, when he's going through his testimony, will speak to how he's addressing the remainder of the comments of the Historic Preservation Commission. Tonight, in connection with the application, we intend to call two witnesses, Paul Sionis, our project architect, and Justin Ausilia, who is our professional planner. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to call our first witness.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Sionis, are you present?
I am.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Paul Sionis. My address is 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Paul, and you previously testified before the zoning board in Montclair and been qualified as an expert in architecture.
Yes, I have.
I ask that you please be accepted, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Paul, you did prepare the architectural plans that were submitted in advance of tonight's meeting, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If you could then start by discussing the existing location of the building to orient the board as to the property we're speaking about tonight.
And Paul,
Sure.
before we do that, is this a PowerPoint presentation that you're giving us?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll just collectively mark it as A1. And does it have, how many sheets is that? 20? I can't read.
23.
Okay.
23 sheets.
So we'll call this PowerPoint presentation consisting of 23 sheets as Exhibit A1.
Okay.
Mr. Sullivan, may I ask a question?
Depends.
Okay, now, with the configuration of the building, it's now a single structure. Does that get, where before the garage was an accessory building? And I didn't know how that affects the application per se. Because now it's all an attached singular, one single structure.
I don't know, Janice, does that impact any of the setbacks or any of the use provisions? Did you review it in that context?
We did, and it creates the variances that are being, several of the variances that are being requested tonight. So I think if you listen to the testimony, you know, the impact of the connection of the two buildings will be addressed, I'm pretty sure, by the testimony.
That's correct. I mean, and Paul will go through this, and so will our planners. But in short, you're only allowed to have one principal building on the lot, which it will now be one principal building. But then two variances are triggered for the rear yard and side yard because the building is now connected in one principal building, and also there's going to be an office use within the space that was the former garage. So that requires some variance relief, even though we're not moving the building.
Okay, so Joe, let's listen to the testimony. If we have any further questions, we'll deal with them.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul.
All right. Let me just pull up my. So the property is 63 Park Street. It's known as Lot 16.01 in Block 2311. It's approximately 130 feet wide by 200 feet deep. It's trapezoidal in shape, and it's slightly more than a half acre. It's 0.6097 acres. It's located on the east side of Park Street, about 95 feet north of the intersection of Claremont Avenue and Park Street. The lot slopes about 7 feet in height from the front of the property down to the rear of the property to the east towards the Montclair Municipal Building parking lot. The lot is currently improved with an asphalt parking lot that's striped for 17 cars, and the front 13 spaces are at a difficult angle. They're at a 60-degree angle, which if you've been in that parking lot. It's difficult to maneuver into those spaces unless you drive to the rear of the parking area. In addition to the paved parking, there are two existing buildings. There's the multi-story former Red Cross building that's located almost in the center of the lot. And that front building was constructed in 1910 as a residence, and it became the Red Cross offices in 1940. And then in 1955, an addition was added to the back of that building. Then also there's a a 7-car single-story garage structure at the rear southeast corner of the lot. So the first slide was a survey map that was prepared by Langen Engineering April 9th, 2019, and it was colored for better visibility. Next slide, please, Janice. This slide is a street view of the property, and this is from Google Earth. So this is the existing multi-story former Red Cross building as viewed from Park Street. So the building appears as a 2.5-story building in height from the front view. So when you're standing on Park Street or on the public sidewalk in the front, it appears as a 2.5-story building. There's an existing sloped asphalt driveway on the north side of the lot with those parking stalls that I just described. All of those, many of those stalls are in the front yard, and they're at a 60-degree angle to the northern lot line. The property is located in the Walnut Street Potential Historic Resource Area, and it's also within the OR3 Garden Apartment and Office Building District. Next slide, please. This is another image taken from Google Earth Street View. This is one where Google actually drove into the rear of the property to take this photo. So you can see there's an existing flat roof portion at the rear of the building with an entrance at grade level, and that was the addition constructed in the 1950s. There's a large asphalt vehicle maneuvering area, and you can see that sloped asphalt driveway on the right side or the north side of this photograph. And the grade, as I said, the grade drops by 7 feet from the front of the property at the public sidewalk down to the rear from where this photograph was taken. Next slide, please. So this is the surrounding area. This is taken from a Bing satellite 3D view. And you can see in the center of this slide, Lot 16 is the second lot to the north of Claremont Avenue to the south. So as I said, it's 95 feet to the north of that Claremont Avenue Park Street intersection. And this property is adjoined by the Montclair Municipal Building and parking lot directly to the east. Directly to the south is the former PNC Bank drive-up facility and parking lot. Directly to the north is Temple Shammari Immuna and their school. And then there's a variety of office uses on both sides of Park Street in the vicinity of the subject property. Next slide, please. This is a site plan that was prepared by our civil engineering consultant, ACS or Anderson Consulting Services. This is a colored version of the site plan that was submitted. So the goal of the project is to improve the site with new storm drainage, eliminate the front yard parking completely, make all parking stalls 90 degrees rather than that awkward 60 degrees, have a total of 23 parking stalls on site, whereas only 20 are required. So the proposal is to adaptively reuse the existing building. In other words, convert it from office use to a mixed-use multifamily residential use in addition to offices. So we're proposing a total of 10 dwelling units in addition to professional offices. We're proposing to construct a 2.5-story addition above the existing flat roof area, and that's the flat roof that I showed that was constructed in 1955 at the rear of the building. So we're proposing a 2.5-story addition above the flat roof area and set the addition back approximately 42 feet from the front of the existing building. Also, we're proposing a 900 square foot footprint addition at the southwest corner. That's shown sort of in orange on the left side of the existing building. And that's set back 38 feet from the front of the existing building. And that would align with the existing building, the southwest corner, and we're also proposing to connect the building to the existing garages. So the proposal is also to convert part of the existing lowest floor level and the existing garages to professional office space. In addition, we're showing new sidewalks on the north side and the south side of the building, and those sidewalks would be constructed of permeable pavers. In addition, there'll be two new patio areas that will be just north of the former garage, and the purpose of that would be for users of the office space to be able to use the patio space just to the exterior of the new professional office space in the former garages. We're proposing new site lighting around the perimeter of the property. Currently, there's no site lighting. We're proposing a new stucco-coated cement masonry trash recycling enclosure with a roof at the bottom right or the northeast corner of the subject property. And then we're also proposing a new 240 volt conduit to be installed at the parking lot perimeter that will serve as electric car charging. It'll be the electric car charging infrastructure, which will make this property EV ready, which is as required by state mandate as of the beginning of August. So the proposal is to have a 240 volt conduit installed around the perimeter of the parking, which is acceptable for electric cars to be able to charge at each of the parking stalls. Next slide, please. Number 6. Slide 6 is the landscape plan. The landscaping on the property is in poor condition right now, was never maintained. So the site will be extensively landscaped. All the plantings that are shown will be native to New Jersey. We're proposing new evergreen plantings to screen the parking area on the north side up against Chambre Muna, and also along the east side up against the municipal building parking lot. The new cedar trees that are proposed for the east side up against the municipal building parking lot can grow to 18 feet tall, but they can be maintained at 12 feet in height, and they form a dense evergreen screen. We're proposing new shade trees and small flowering trees throughout the entire site. And as I said on the previous slide, new permeable pavers will be used at the new walkways adjacent to the building, in addition to at the patio spaces adjacent to the office use. So quite a few new shrubs and trees. I think Lisa had counted them. I think 155 new shrubs and trees are being proposed. Next slide, please.
550.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Next slide, number 7. This is the ground floor plan. So the garage building at the top right will be connected to the main building with the ground floor addition, and you can see the ground floor addition is colored in that dark bluish purple. So that's the 900 square foot footprint addition that is serving to connect the existing building to the garages. The garage building and a portion of the lower floor level will become professional office space. Actually, 2,879 square feet will be professional office space, and the current garage door openings and the rear or east side of the lower floor level of the existing building will be infilled with new aluminum and glass storefront windows and doors. So it'll be large glass openings to the exterior into this new office space. The remainder of this partially underground space, so that the front building, most of it is partially underground. The remainder of it will include a ground floor level entry that I highlighted with that yellow arrow. That will be a entry for the residential units above. There'll be a lobby with a parcel package area plus lockers, in addition to mailboxes for the tenants. And then there'll be a new elevator lobby at this ground floor level. So we're proposing a new elevator. The building has never had an elevator. In addition, within the existing lower level of the building, We're proposing mechanical equipment and meter rooms to fill the rest of the space. The professional offices and the residential uses will have separate entries as shown. So the small blue arrows show the entries to the professional office space. The large yellow arrow shows a separate detached entry for the residential units on this ground floor. Next slide, please, slide 8.
Did you mention the storage units here?
Yeah, I will on slide 8. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So slide 8 will be an enlargement of slide 7 to make it easier to see.
Oh, okay, good. There we go.
Okay, so slide 8 is an enlargement of the ground floor plan. And as I stated, the existing garage building and a portion of the lower level of the building will become professional office space. And the majority of the current basement will include individual tenant storage. And in the center of the slide, you can see it's labeled tenant storage. And there'll be tenant storage spaces for each of the 10 tenants that are proposed for this building. Also, there'll be mechanical equipment space, meter rooms, and a small residential rental office within the existing basement of the building. And then the entry, as I said in the previous slide, the entry to the residential lobby is shown with that yellow arrow in the center left of this slide. Next slide, please. Slide 9 is the first floor plan. The first floor plan will contain a total of 4 new dwelling units. They'll be accessed by the new elevator, the common interior stairway, in addition to the front center entry to the building. So the yellow arrow in the bottom center of this page is the existing front entry to the building. That will remain as one of the entries to the residential units. All of the units will have exterior terraces, porches, balconies, and/or patio spaces. So we thought it was important that every unit has exterior spaces for the tenants to enjoy. Unit number 101, which is on the top left, is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit. That's 1,025 square feet. Top right is unit 102, also 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It's a little larger at 1,355 square feet, has a large terrace in the top right corner. Unit 103 in the bottom right, that will have 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom at 887 square feet. And unit 104, the bottom left, is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit, 784 square feet. We've been asked to identify the potential affordable units. Out of the 10 units, 2 of the units will be affordable dwelling units. On this floor, it's anticipated that unit 103 may be one of the 2 affordable units, 103 in the bottom right. And that one has an exterior patio at the front of the building that's accessed from the primary bedroom in the bottom right of that space. All of the units you'll see have good-sized kitchens that are open to a kitchen, living, dining area. Bedrooms are good size with ample closet space throughout. There are good-sized laundry closets with either stacking washers and dryers, or space next to the washer and dryers to have hampers, and good-sized bathrooms. Next slide, please. Slide 10. Slide 10 is the proposed second floor plan. Second floor will contain 3 new dwelling units. Each of the units, just as on the first floor and the third floor, will have either a terrace, porch, or a balcony. The 3 units on this floor, the top left is 201. That has 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. 202 in the top right, it's shown as 3 bedrooms, but it's actually 2 bedrooms and a den. So this is unit 202 is 2 bedrooms, a den, 2 bathrooms, and that's a 1,544 square foot unit. Unit 203 in the bottom left is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit. That's 1,500 square feet. Next slide, please. Slide 11. Slide 11 is the third floor plan. The third floor will also contain 3 new dwelling units. Each of the units will also have exterior balconies, and the 3 units are similar in size to the units in the rest of the building. 301 in the top left is a 2-bedroom unit with 1 bathroom. That's 1,128 square feet. 302 in the top right, it's two bedrooms plus a den, and then also 2 bathrooms. It has 1,448 square feet. Good sized balcony off of the living room towards the rear. And then unit 303 in the front of the building, that has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. That's 990 square feet, and this was targeted as one of the 2 affordable dwelling units for the building. Again, all of the units have balconies off of the living spaces. Next slide, please.
Oh, the affordable units, you didn't include a 3-bedroom unit?
We don't have a 3-bedroom unit on the second floor. The unit 202 is a 2-bedroom unit. It's mislabeled as a 3-bedroom plus den, but it's actually a 2-bedroom plus a den.
Okay, there's no 3-bedroom units in the building?
Correct.
All right, well, that's something we can talk, because I think the requirement is that one of them be 3 bedrooms. All right.
Okay. Slide 12. Slide 12 is the roof plan. When we went to the Development Review Commission meeting, we originally had the HVAC condenser units mounted on the ground in front of part of the building, and that would have required another variance request. So it suggested that we place the condenser units on the roof. So we've created a flat roof area almost in the center of the building for all of the exterior HVAC equipment, and that will be surrounded by an equipment screen, which I'll show on the elevations. We're proposing a new roof hatch up to this roof for servicing of the equipment.
Paul, just a sec. Paul, Janice, Mr. Moore seemingly is lost. He says he's on, but can't join us.
Mr. Moore? Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. Made him a panelist.
Thank you. For some reason, it wouldn't allow me to unmute or turn on my video. So thank you for bringing me
Sorry
in.
about that.
That's all
Great.
right. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, you can resume.
Should I start all over? All right, slide 13.
I was here. You just
Okay.
couldn't see me and I couldn't unmute.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. All right, slide 13. Slide 13 is a 3D view. It's a rendering of the building looking from the looking to the east. This is standing on the Park Street public sidewalk looking at the building. The old PNC driveway is on the right side of this rendering. So the existing building will be thoroughly updated with all new windows, all new finishes throughout the building, new insulation, and all new mechanical systems. The addition to the southeast, which is the right side behind that pink tree, the addition is designed to complement the existing architecture, and it's set back 38 feet from the front line of the existing original facade of the building. So that right side is set back 38 feet. And the front facade, in my opinion, maintains a residential appearance. Next slide, please. Slide 14 is another rendering. This is a 3D view looking west. And this is a view from above the Montclair Municipal Building parking lot. However, this is shown without the proposed evergreen screening that will be placed in front of these 2 cars. So we're proposing those juniper trees to be placed between the curb in the front of those 2 cars in the foreground and the property line that's shared with the Montclair Municipal Building. So we asked the renderers not to show those evergreens because it would hide the view not only of the parking lot, but of the garage that's being converted, the 7 garages that are being converted to professional office space. So this also shows the 2.5-story addition that's being placed over the existing flat roof area of the building. And as I said, it also shows the conversion of the existing garages to professional office space. So on that one photograph that was done by Google where they drove into the back of the parking lot, it showed the one-story flat roof section at the rear of the building. We're proposing to construct a 2.5-story addition over that flat roof area and connect it to the existing 2.5-story building at the front of the building. But again, the property slopes down by 7 feet from the right side of this this rendering to the rear to this parking lot. Next slide, please. Slide 15 is the proposed west or front elevation. We're proposing to match the ridge height of the roof of the new addition with the existing building. So the building will not be any higher than the existing building. So we're matching that ridge line or the height of the roof on the addition with the existing building. And again, as I stated, the new addition on the right in this drawing is set back 38 feet from the original front main elevation. The exterior materials of the proposed addition will match and complement all of the existing materials. So we're proposing an exposed brick foundation. We're proposing stucco walls. We're showing minimal timbering on this facade only. So on the right side on the new addition, we are continuing some of the Tudor timbering from the existing front facade, but we're minimizing it and then stopping it as it works its way around to the other elevations. We're proposing vertical board and batten siding at the 3rd floor. So currently the 3rd floor dormers in certain areas of the 3rd floor in the existing building have a pretty attractive vertical board and batten siding. We're looking for the right facade material for the 3rd floor of this building, and it's a nice material. So we're matching that all the way around on the 3rd floor. So it's vertical wood board and batten siding. We're also, you can see in this view the HVAC equipment screen to the right of the existing chimney. There's a thin railing, a 3/4 inch to 1 inch metal railing that serves as fall protection around that roof hatch. But to the right of that, you see that low rectangular image in gray, and that's an HVAC equipment screen. We looked at different materials and decided to use a perforated metal material to completely surround and screen all of the HVAC equipment on the roof. We didn't want to use a wood fence, for example. We thought that would be horrible. Also proposing all new wood or wood-clad windows and doors on the around the entire building, and then black metal balcony railings. The front facade, again, it maintains the residential appearance, the original residential appearance, in my opinion. Next slide, please, slide 16. Slide 16 is the north elevation. This is the driveway that is, this view would be difficult to see. It would be easy to see if Shamre Amunu was not there, but this is a view, a drawing along the existing northerly driveway, and you can see how the property steps down. So again, the ridge height of the new addition will match that of the existing buildings. To the left side of this drawing is the 1-story garage with the 7 openings, and those openings will be infilled with glass and doors to become attractive professional office space. And just as I'll describe on all of the elevations, the materials will match the existing materials on the exterior. The brick foundation, 1st and 2nd floor walls are primarily stucco with, and in some portions we're proposing horizontal wood clapboard to break up the expanses of stucco. And again, the vertical board and batten siding always at the 3rd floor, the perforated metal HVAC equipment screen on the roof, the wood or wood-clad windows and doors, the black metal balcony railings. And then in certain areas, we're proposing metal roof hoods, basically a sloped roof above certain groupings of windows around the building. And that matches an existing sloped metal roof hood above a pair of windows towards the front right in this drawing. So you'll see this on 3 of the elevations. We're proposing these metal, we're calling roof hoods. over certain groupings of windows, again, to break up the facade. And you can see on this elevation, and I'll talk about lighting later, but there are certain wall-mounted wall sconces we're proposing. In the center of this elevation, you can see two wall-mounted light fixtures to the right and left of the grouping of windows, and that's basically to wash the wall, that one facade. We're also proposing similar sconces at each of the balconies or terraces. And also to the on the professional office space to the left in the former garage, we're proposing the same wall sconces on the piers or the solid wall spaces between the glass. Next slide, please. Slide 17 shows the proposed east or rear elevation. This is the view again that you would see probably from the second floor of the Montclair Municipal Building. This again, you see the exterior materials are matching and complementing the existing materials. On the rear of the building, we have two brick columns with stone bases that are supporting two gable roof sections of the building. The first and second floor, just as the other elevations, are primarily stucco. There's an infill of horizontal clapboard to where the building is inset in the center. Again, the vertical board and batten siding at the third floor, the perforated metal HVAC equipment screen, the wood or wood-clad windows and doors, and then another metal roof hood above a grouping of windows on the first floor. So that's the green that the cursor is on right now. That's metal roof above a grouping of windows to tie in some of the details from the original building, but also to complement the facades on three sides of the building. Next slide, please. This is a view from Claremont Avenue. This is the proposed south elevation. And you could see the addition is step back from the original facade, step back 38 feet. At that addition, we have first and second floor roof porches. This was discussed at the Development Review Commission. We originally had different balconies on that facade. We played with it a lot to see what looked right. But now we have these two roof porches at the southwest corner of the addition, and everywhere else there'll be open balconies or a terrace. Just on the other elevations, the materials will match the original materials, the existing and proposed brick foundation. Again, the stucco, the vertical board and batten siding on the third floor, and then again the two metal roof hoods above the first floor window groupings. This is a view, as I said, you couldn't see this view now if the existing bank building is there, but if the bank building is removed, you would see this view from Claremont Avenue. The right side, you see the existing 7-car garage that's partially buried below grade. And at the top left, you could see that most of the first or the ground floor of this building is also below grade or partially underground. Next slide, please. This is slide 19, and we're proposing a freestanding sign at the front yard. It's at the top left of this slide. So it's a 4-foot wide, 3-foot high, 16-inch thick brick wall with a cast stone cap with a overhanging drip edge. We're proposing lettering to be placed either on stainless steel panels or on transparent plastic panels. So the top part of the signage will have individual letters stating 63 Park Street. There'll be another panel stating offices at rear, and then two signs one for each office. So even though it's 2,800 square feet of office space, the applicants are hoping that this will only be one tenant and no more than 2 tenants occupying that space. So we're allowing space for up to 2 tenants for the new professional office space. The bottom right is a chart of the lighting that's proposed. type A, B, and C, which is just above the word site, is the image of the site light fixtures that were selected by the civil engineer. Those are pole-mounted light fixtures, and on the civil engineer's drawings currently shows those poles not on line with the parking lot stripes. The civil engineer, ACS, will be revising the plan to align the poles with the center of the parking space stripes so that vehicles don't hit the poles. And he'll also put a note that the poles shall be located 2.5 feet from the edge of the curb. There's a foot candle diagram indicated on the civil engineer's drawings. So the pole-mounted lights are shown as types A, B, C, and D. And then I indicated there'll be some wall sconces. That's shown as light fixture type E and F. That's in the center. And then there will be some soffit-mounted recess lights. So at the rear elevation, in other words, the east elevation that faces the municipal building parking lot, you might have seen the two balconies at the top for the top floor units under a gable roof, and those gable roof ends will have these soffit-mounted light fixtures to help illuminate the balconies and make them safe for people to use during the evening. Next slide, please. This is the Montclair zoning map, and I put an arrow pointing to the subject property. So the property is located in the OR3 zone. Residential uses are permitted as a conditional use within this zone. And the conditions are that building facades and front yard areas must have a residential appearance. And the second condition is that residential use is not permitted on the first floor, and our first floor will have residential use. At the rear of the property, that first floor is a story above grade, but technically the first floor is from the main entrance at the front of the building, and since that will have a residential use on the first floor, that has a variance request. And then the third condition is that off-street parking shall be equal to that required for either the residential use or the non-residential use, whichever is greater. So a total of 20 parking stalls are required by this, and we're providing 23 parking spaces. So we're providing 3 additional spaces than the number that are required. Next slide, please. Slide number 1, as I wrote on the top, our planner will discuss all of these zoning issues in greater detail. But I was asked to at least go through the variances that are being requested. So again, this is the OR3 zone, and residential uses are permitted as a conditional use within this zone. The
Well,
development
just to clarify, I think it's the conditional use is a mix of office and residential combined. Is that correct?
Thanks, Lisa. Yes. So the development satisfies all conditions except condition 2, which is that residential use is not permitted on the first floor. And we'll hear from the planner, but this deviation is a function of the unique topography of the site. As I said, the property slopes down by 7 feet from the front property line to the rear. There's an exposed floor towards the rear of the property, as shown in the photograph on slide 3. The exposed floor will be repurposed for office use, but due to topography, the first floor of residential space at the front of the building will match the Park Street elevation. Second item I list there is that variance relief is sought in that converting the garages to office use and connecting them to the existing building, we have a 4.5-foot side yard setback once we connect the garage to the main building, whereas 20 feet is required. And we also have a 4.6-foot rear yard setback, 25 feet is required. So the building location remains the same, but by connecting the garages and converting them to professional office space, we're creating these 2 variance requests. Variance relief is sought for the building height, even though we're maintaining the existing building height and we're continuing the existing roof line. So the maximum permitted height in this zone is 35 feet, 2.5 stories. The existing building height is 38.4 feet. It's listed as 2.5 stories, and we're proposing 38.9 3 feet, and that we're required to measure around the perimeter of the building in 10 foot, every 10 feet. So by measuring, including the garage space, the proposed is actually 0.53 feet taller than the existing. And the proposed is being called a 4-story building. So the building will look like a 2.5-story building from Park Street. But again, the property slopes down by 7 feet towards the rear. Also, the building is well screened by vegetation, both existing and proposed. So there should be little impact or visual impact by the height of this building. Waivers are required based on the ACS, the civil engineer site plan. First is for parking location. Township ordinance requires a minimum setback for off-street parking of 4 feet, and the proposed is 3 feet. Excuse me. And then the driveway width. The minimum parking aisle width required is 24 feet. And on the civil engineer's drawings, the minimum dimension is 19.2 feet at 5 compact stall spaces, sort of at the front of the parking area. The stalls 19 through 23. Then the civil engineer has 22 feet of parking aisle depth at stalls 11 through 18, and 24.6 feet of parking aisle width at stalls 1 through 10. So these waiver requests allow the applicant to eliminate the existing front yard parking and also that awkward 60-degree angled spaces. The tenants will most likely be assigned parking stalls, and therefore they will be used to slightly smaller dimensions since they'll be parking here every day. It's not like a building where different users come in every day to park in spaces, and it would be difficult to park in a slightly undersized space or a space that has a slightly smaller dimension to the parking aisle. The civil engineer site plan indicates pole-mounted fixtures that do not align with the parking stall striping. I had mentioned that when I described the lighting. The civil engineer will revise their drawing and verify that the lights are located a minimum of 2.5 feet from the edge of the curb line. Next slide, please. This slide number 22, this is an exhibit we prepared for the Historic Commission. There were questions about how visible would the HVAC units on the roof be. So the top image, there's a 6-foot tall person standing at the front of a parking space in the municipal building parking lot. And then we're showing the proposed juniper trees at approximately 8 feet in height. As I said, they'll probably be maintained at 12 feet in height. They could grow to 18 feet in height, but we're showing 8 feet in height for the juniper tree. And as you can see, person standing in the parking lot would not be able to see the HVAC units on the roof of the building. And then the bottom image is a person standing on the Park Street public sidewalk, a 6-foot tall person looking up at the front of the building. And for the majority of the view along Park Street, a person would not be able to see the rooftop screen. However, there's a small diagram in the center left that says roof plan view of HVAC screen. The dark area is where the rooftop screen would not be visible from, but there is a light area. There's that triangular shaped light area in the bottom right of that rectangle, and that's the space, excuse me, that'd be a viewing angle where the rooftop equipment would be visible. Excuse me. Next slide, please. This is, again, the 3D view looking east, and this is exactly where the HVAC equipment would be visible from. So standing at the current driveway to the former PNC Bank along the southerly property line of 63 Park Street, the person standing on the sidewalk would have this view as is accurately shown in this rendering of the HVAC equipment screen. That concludes my presentation. I'll answer any questions. Excuse me.
Okay, Mr. Fleischer, do you have any questions?
I guess I have a bunch of questions. I'm concerned about the overall massing and the scale of the increase. And what the presentation doesn't show is it doesn't show in any of the drawings and the renderings what the mass of the existing building had been previously. And I was out at the site today. I walked around it. I walked up and down Claremont. I walked up and down Park. And to me, that thing that's identified in the site plans as this 900 square foot proposed addition, which is that whole, what I'll call the south wing, from my perspective, is literally a disaster in terms of the massing. It totally obliterates any sense of the historic structure. You get no sense of the historic structure anywhere from Park Street. It's basically been buried entirely. You get no sense of the structure from the municipal parking lot. Not that that's necessarily a major criteria, but none of the presentation really shows, in a sense, and I don't know whether it can be annotated for tonight's presentation, of where the mass was of that historic one-family home at some point, which almost 60 years, more than 60 years ago, someone allowed a one-story addition. And now that one-story addition has even become a four-story building. The sense of that existing building is gone totally. I think I see this as a significant overdevelopment of the site, and I'm not sure how and why and what else could be done. I certainly don't agree with the parking spaces where it's roughly 19 feet to back out. Everybody comes in and out of that driveway. It's very, very tight there. I think all of those first 5 or 6 spaces should be eliminated until you get to the back, or where you get at least the 22 feet. This seems to me to be significant overdevelopment. The only access for a handicapped person is to essentially walk all the way down the driveway from the street to get into that little door in the basement level, which is not a residential level at all. This seems to me to be way too much building going on this site. And, you know, Paul, as usual, has done a fine job with architecture, but I think from a planning and a massing perspective, he's totally destroyed any sense of the original structure other than from Park Street, where, in theory, you don't see that big mass behind it off to the south. That's 38 feet back, as if it disappears from sight. And that's a big problem for me. I think there's much to development on this site, Paul, and I don't know where to go with questioning, other than the fact that to put that large mass, that new large mass, literally right on the property line, is different than the one-story building being tight and close, because we don't know what's going to happen to that bank site. And we don't know why they wouldn't be able to build a 4-story building on that site as well, and just as close to the property line. There's something wrong with 2 buildings of that mass that might be sitting side by side. The fact that it's a 1-story bank building today doesn't mean it's going to be a 1-story bank building tomorrow. And my sense, although I could be wrong, is while it is a 1-story building, you can see quite a bit more of the mass of the units on the roof from Claremont than that very narrow triangle you showed. Though I'm not sitting there and looking at it from that perspective, but you can certainly see up to the building. In fact, the only thing that's blocking the fact that you don't see so much of it is that you've had this big 4-story building on the south edge of the site. So I personally think this project is significantly overdeveloped, notwithstanding the issue of residential on the first floor because it's not the ground floor. Somehow it's just much too much. I'm a little surprised that it got through the earlier reviews, and that's my opinion. I'm not comfortable with the amount of mass that's here, and I'd like to see documents that really show the line of the old building, because in a sense, all the things that indicate the old building treat that little one-story addition as if it was part of the old building. There's no document that really shows that one-story building was a one-story building and where the line of the old historic, what I will call the old historic residential structure that became the American Red Cross headquarters was. You're treating that little one-story addition in the back as if it's the same as the mass of the house, which was obviously much bigger, and that was almost an attached accessory structure when it was approved back in 1955. So those are comments that really intended to elicit a response, because I just think there's way, way too much here. All those big trees adjacent to the park, to the bank, are all going to be gone. They create a nice separation now between the two properties, but they're not going to be there anymore because you basically filled that space with buildings. So right now, I would not be in favor of this thing, and it's just too big to me. And I don't see why we should be justifying a four-story structure in an area that in and of itself is normally limited to 2 stories. Fully understanding the fact that the driveway goes down, but I need more information on what would justify a 4-story massive structure of this scale as if it were what I'll call a minor expansion of some existing historic building. It's just not, it doesn't appear that way, it doesn't look that way, and it's not trying to look that way. It's trying to look like a very large apartment house. So I don't know, Paul, if you have any thoughts, or because I'm not in favor of that whole addition, particularly up at that height on that side of the building. I think that's a mistake. And even building over the 1-story building that's been there since the 1950s, I think is also way too much mass to carry on that site. So those are my thoughts and my comments, and maybe you can respond to some of them.
Well, thanks for your comments again, Mr. Fleischer. We discussed massing at the Historic Commission in depth. The question that came up at the Historic Commission was what of the original building would be lost, and really the only item lost from the original building, as shown on slide 3, that one gable roof that's in the center of
Can we go back to that slide?
Yeah. So slide 3 shows best that gable roof, that existing gable roof structure would be gone because that would be within the new building. Everything else on the original structure would, the details would remain.
What about the south? What about the south, Paul?
Yeah, the south, everything would remain. If we want to look at this, into the right number. So the south, we have slide 18, Janice. Right. So on the left side, that's the original portion of the building. We'd be building in front of a partial shed roof where we meet up with the new dormers on the new addition. So in the last 2/3 of that main part of the building is new. Everything to the left of those, well, everything to the beginning with where those people are standing on the balcony everything behind those people is existing would remain. So the 2/3 to the rear, to the right side is new.
How many square feet are in the existing building?
I have not calculated that.
Because without blinking an eye, I will say that you've increased the volume of this mass by 2.5 to 3-fold over the existing building, without any question, which I think is a massive increase in volume on the site. I'm guessing 2.5 to 3 times, because the entire 1-story building is a huge amount of mass, and then you've extended it over this, what you identify on the site plan as a 900 square foot addition, but it's really 900 square foot on every one of the floors. It's not just 900 square feet. Its footprint is 900 square feet. But the amount of actual square footage of building is considerably more than that. I think probably 4 times that amount.
Mr. Fleischer, I have a concern related to that, and it has to do with the side yard setback variance, because the side yard setback in this zone district is 20 feet.
That was the next question I was going to get to.
It seems to me that because this addition is 7.8 feet, you need a variance from the 20-foot setback for this addition.
And that's unrelated to the old, offices, to the old garage, which are now offices.
Right,
But
so if
that
I
alone
can,
should have been 20 feet.
yes, if I can say a few words on the comments that are being raised. So as far as the building massing and developing the site, I just want to point out that we are below the maximum impervious coverage for this property, where 70% is permitted and we're at 64.4%. And that's maximum impervious coverage overall, and maximum building coverage that is permitted is 40%, and we're at 22.4%. We are also eliminating the front yard parking spaces and bringing that into greater compliance. With respect to the side yard setback, we did request a side yard setback because back where the office portion is, we are at a lower setback. I'm sorry, if I can just pull it up here.
But for the mass, it appears that you need 20 feet for the big mass, not just for the little office area.
So,
And that knocks out virtually the entire 900 square foot addition.
well, if I could, so it says in your ordinance that the side yard setback is for office buildings 20 feet, but for all other buildings, the side yard setback is 6 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other. So given the fact that there's residential in this portion of the building, I believe that we are in compliance with the side yard setback.
I don't agree with that, because it says it's only for the front yard that you look for the multifamily dwelling setback. For everything else, like for the side yard and the rear yard, you apply the standard that's in 347-64.
Related to office is what you're saying?
Right, and this is essentially a mixed-use building.
Right, it's a mixed-use building, so they says for office buildings, it's 20 feet, and for all other buildings, it's 6 feet. So I don't know how you've historically applied it, but it is a mixed-use building, not all office, and in this portion of the building, it is the residential use.
But Janice, you're saying that if there's some office in the building, you've got to use the greater standard, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, Lisa, I appreciate your argument on behalf of your client, but I think I'm sure that's how it's historically been applied here also.
And that's fine as well. I think our notice is covered by it because we did apply for the side yard setback, which is
4.58 feet. Yeah.
Correct.
So I don't take issue with the notice. I think Mr. Fleischer is simply pointing out that this portion of the building also adds to the massing at less than 20 feet. I think he was just making a point.
Understood.
Well, I think it does affect. I think all of that area needs to be set back at least 20 foot. This new construction, the notion that it's set back a little bit from the garage because there's a slight angle on on the property line, and I guess they didn't want to get into the issue of being even closer than that. But the fact of the matter is that mass should not be 6 feet away from this property line under any circumstances. And that was the reaction I had when I walked the site. The notion that there was going to be a 4-story mass right up on that property line, it's, I think, a huge mistake if it were to be approved. Okay, I'm done for now.
Okay, I want to inject, just because while we're on this, before we return to the normal sequence. Paul, one of the comments of the Historic Preservation Commission was that the proposed addition should be further differentiated and subordinate to and not competing in size and scale. And I think Joe's point is you are very much competing in size and scale. And how do you respond to the Historic Preservation Commission comment?
Well, our response was that the main addition was set back 38 feet from the primary facade, the original facade. And that's the view that's seen most of the time from Park Street. You look down the driveway and you might see that 2.5-story addition over that existing 1-story space. But that's just for a short time. You'll see that. The majority of the time is you'll see the addition that's subservient to the original building by being stepped back to 38 feet. We discussed whether we should change materials to look completely different than the existing building, and that was frowned upon. So we're complementing all of the materials on the new addition with the original materials. We discussed window muntin details. There was discussion, should we keep the original muntin details? And we showed choices to the Historic Commission, and it was decided to go with the new muntin materials that we're showing that are different than the original muntins, except for the 2 on the first floor. So yes, we think it's subservient to the original building and the fact that it steps back. So that's how we're answering that.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
Questions? I don't have any questions right now. Only because I'm a little confused with the project in general. So I have no questions now. I will have some later, probably.
Okay, Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
Yes, can you go over the parking again? Which parking is designated for the residents and which parking is designated for the office spaces?
Sure. The parking spaces have not been designated yet. There are 23 parking spaces shown on the site plan. 20 are required. 2 of them are the barrier-free or ADA spaces as shown with the blue barrier-free symbol at just to the east side of the building. And what I stated was that the applicants have indicated they will assign parking spaces to the residents and perhaps the office tenants, but they, the project is not approved yet, so they have not decided which spaces will be for the residents versus the office tenants, and which will be, for example, 3 guest parking spaces. If I would assume that the 3 closest to the street, since they're have the smallest parking aisle, would be designated for guest parking. That would be the overflow parking. So.
Okay. And then have you looked at how the massing and the height of this building compare to 66 Park Avenue across the street, as well as 56, which is some pretty large office buildings?
I have not. Is 66 the brick building?
Yes.
I have not looked at that. I actually worked on the design of that building over 30 years ago. That building has all parking underground. So the driveway leads below grade, and then the entire parking lot is under that building. And then there's 3 stories of office space above the parking. But I don't remember what the height is, the exact height of the building is.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there is a lot to unpack, but I would like to ask the applicant regarding the stormwater management. So is there a dry well proposed in this project?
There are separate drawings by the, Lisa, should I try to answer, or? I'm not the civil engineer on the project. There were separate civil engineering drawings filed with stormwater management details. And looking at their drawings, there is a dry well system on their drawings under the rear parking area. But again, I'm not the expert, so I should not testify about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shannon. The other question I had was regarding the proposed professional office space. Are you planning to use the existing footprint, or you are increasing the footprint?
As I testified, they're increasing, the footprint is to be increased where the existing garage structure is to meet the existing primary building. There'll be a 900 square foot footprint addition to connect the 7-car garage to the existing building. And so yes, the footprint will be increased in that location that was discussed that has the deficient side yard setback.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the last question I had was regarding the rooftop equipment.
Yes.
I do have some concerns regarding safety. I know you proposed adding fall protection, but at the same time, I am concerned on having equipment and maybe in the winter months, it might get slippery. So can you talk a little bit about the like the flat roof that you're proposing, what type of material that will be, and the fall protection assessment?
We have not selected the actual roofing material in that flat roof, but all of that HVAC equipment will be surrounded by an equipment screen that's approximately 4 foot high. And then, as is required by building code, there will be fall protection, which is basically a guardrail to prevent anyone from falling off the roof who goes up to service that equipment.
Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Before I start, Lisa, are you going to have the engineer testify, or are you just going to rely on Paul's testimony?
The engineer, unfortunately, was unable to attend tonight's meeting. We were hoping to get through it with Paul, but if there are specific engineering type questions that you would like answers to regarding drainage and whatnot, we can carry to have their civil
I
engineers.
just wanted to understand what you were
Sure.
hoping for, and we'll see how it goes. Paul, let me start with the parking. The ordinance requires requires the number of spaces based on either the residential use or the office use. So what is the 20 based on?
That is based on the greater of whichever is greater. So I'm just pulling up the zoning chart on this engineer's drawing. So the parking, I'm looking at, again, unfortunately, I'm looking at the civil engineer's zoning chart. And for off-street parking, he lists The parking is, as I said, greater of the office or residential. Offices, 1 space per 250 gross square feet of floor area, which required 11.58 spaces for the office space. So that's the 2897 square feet divided by 250 was 11.58. Residential, it was calculated based on the New Jersey residential site improvement standards. And that had a requirement totaling 19.4 spaces, which rounds up to 20 spaces being required.
Oh, it's the residential that dictates the 20, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, so the ordinance is structured so it's assuming there'll be shared parking between the two uses, and what's the use that requires the maximum number of spaces. So I guess I'm curious about, you said this spaces would be assigned to the residential uses, but clearly that's 20 of 23 spaces, and during the day it's envisioned that the office use is going to be using, you know, in theory 11 spaces, but clearly more than the 3 spaces that are excess. Is that correct?
That's logical. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, you know, I guess when spaces are assigned, it's going to be a little tricky, and, you know, who's leaving when and whatever. I'm just not sure assigning space is necessarily going to work. If any of the residents of the building are handicapped, how are they going to access the building?
There are 2 barrier-free or handicap spaces at the rear of the building. There's a barrier-free accessible path from those spaces to the new entry in the middle side of the building that leads to the elevator lobby, right where the cursor is there. So that's an accessible pathway.
Okay, so I guess why were those spaces or one of those spaces not located directly across from that entrance?
I can't answer that for the engineer. Sorry.
Because I mean, as you said, there's going to be some slight uphill going from those spaces to that entrance, and
Correct.
okay, then on your drawings, keep this drawing up because I'm going to have other questions coming to you. You showed multiple entrances to the office space, but then you indicated that most they expect 2 tenants. Why are there the multiple entrances? Is it just one for each of the garage doors?
Correct. They're hoping for 1 tenant, possibly 2, but we're showing doors, person doors in each of the garage door openings. Correct.
And will there be connections in the interior of the garage, or I don't know what that
Yes.
space looks like? So that someone wouldn't have to go outside to go from one part of the garage to the other. Is that correct?
That is correct. There'd be an opening between the existing garages and the new 900 square foot footprint addition, which is completely open to the underside of the rear of the existing building, which will be the professional office space.
Okay, and then I have questions on the landscaping, which the first is on the side where the new addition is going and you're seeking a setback. You're proposing 1 deciduous tree and several deciduous shrubs. Why are you not proposing to screen that addition better than using just all deciduous there?
I didn't see the reason to screen that addition. The 1 deciduous tree, which is the sweet gum, that's a beautiful tree that's 5 to 6 feet in diameter at maturity, but will grow 30 or 40 feet in height. The rear of the Van Vleck property the rear lawn is lined with those trees, and it's a real specimen tree that'll serve to be a nice backdrop or foreground to the addition on that side of the building. The other shrubs that are called for, the viburnums, those are they'll grow to 6 to 10 feet tall. But I could certainly substitute evergreens for those deciduous shrubs. I didn't see the need to screen the addition, but we certainly can.
I mean, you screen, from the front to some degree. But it's, that we don't know what's going to go on the corner lot, but, at this point, it's very visible from Claremont, with the addition and, okay. And then, this is showing trees behind the garage. What is there now and how much of that is on your property and how much of it is on the bank property?
Okay, some of the trees that are shown on this Anderson site plan are on the bank property and also on the Chamray Amuna property. We're proposing that the trees on this subject property be removed. So on this image from Park Street, those trees along the left, some of those are on the Chamray Amuna property and some of them are 1 foot onto this subject property. Most of those are, I'd say all of those trees, in my opinion, were volunteers. They were not planted by anyone, but they've grown, by
Right.
themselves.
I agree. That's clearly what they look like.
Yeah, so they're tight. They're growing into the fence that's currently there. So our proposal is to remove all of the trees that are on the 63 Park Street property and replace them with something much nicer, which is what's proposed. And in this case, we're proposing that the
Inkberry you're proposing.
Yeah, the inkberries are being the evergreen inkberries that would be at 4 feet tall along that property line to screen the front of the cars along the north side of the property line. There'll still be the existing volunteer trees on the Chamray Amuna property. We don't have the right to remove those, but those will remain. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with the bank property to the south. There are several trees behind the current garages in that triangular, the peninsula, right where the cursor is. There are a lot of existing large trees there. Also, in my opinion, volunteer trees, even though it was a bank. There are volunteers behind the garages. Those are to be removed. Some of them will grow into the foundation if they're not removed soon. So we're proposing full new planting around the perimeter of this property.
Okay, but your landscape plan doesn't show any plantings in that area, if I'm reading it correctly.
To the south of the garage?
Right, correct.
To the south of the garage, that's all new. It's the CF.
You got CF.
That's not right. That CF is not correct. The CF.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't make sense to me.
No, that's not correct.
Okay. I think it's you're doing the Pennsylvania sedge, I think is what you're proposing.
That's what I recall calling for, but I don't see why this list is CF. That's a typo.
So how tall will the Pennsylvania sedge?
Pennsylvania sedge only gets 18 inches tall. It's a
it's not going to screen the garage at all.
No, that garage is half underground along that south property line, as I showed on the one elevation.
And then I guess I have a question for the junipers you're proposing along the municipal parking lot. I mean, aren't those going to get wide and start intruding into the parking spaces?
They could be maintained at 4 feet in diameter. So as I said, they can grow to 18 feet tall and 6 feet in diameter. I didn't say, but they can grow to 6 feet in diameter. But I recommend that they be maintained to stay within that 4 foot planting strip.
So that they're going to have to trim those on probably a fairly regular basis, at least.
Occasionally, they will have to trim those. Yes.
Then Janice, did we get a new memo from the engineer, or we just have the one that was prepared for the Development Review Committee?
We did not get a new memo from the engineer, but I do have a couple questions.
Okay, well, let me just, I want to, Paula, I mean, there were a bunch of comments and that, when we went over and the engineer, and some of those I know are addressed. Are you able to go over those and whether you're going to comply with the remainder, or is that something we need to engineer for?
think we need the civil engineer to address the engineer's comments.
Yeah, as I'm hearing some of the questions tonight, I think it makes sense to come back with our civil engineer to address the engineering comments and maybe look at some of the issues that were raised today regarding revising some landscaping and moving the ADA spaces.
Janice, you had questions?
Yeah, Paul,
Yeah.
can you remind me, which units are the affordable units?
The discussion was units 103 and 303.
103 and 303,
Correct.
which happen to be the two smallest two-bedroom units in the building. And as I raised at the last meeting, our new ordinance requires that the affordable units be substantially similar in size and in treatment as the market rate unit. And that means the same number of bathrooms. You know, if the two bedrooms have two bathrooms, if the market rate units have two bathrooms, the affordable units have to have two bathrooms. And it looks to me like they all have the majority of them have two bathrooms except for these, affordable units. And they're smaller in size. And we require 1 3-bedroom unit. These units are big enough that I don't see why you can't provide the 1 required 3-bedroom unit to meet the affordable housing requirement.
Okay, I believe at the Development Review Commission, we had a discussion that we're not sure if we were required to have a 3-bedroom unit or.
No, that is a requirement.
Wait, so
There's no doubt about that.
Paul, so I'm looking at your architectural plans, and just to clarify something and let me know if I'm incorrect. It appears to me that on the first level, you have 1 unit that has, or you have 2 units that have 1 bath. And then on the 3rd level, you have 2 units that have 1 bath.
One of those units is a 1-bedroom unit. So I don't think that's, you can't equate a 1-bedroom unit with 1 bath to a 2-bedroom unit with 1 bath.
Right, but we have 3 2-bedrooms that have 1 bath in it.
Okay, so my point is, number 1, the affordable units are the smallest units. That's a problem. They're not similar in size to the other units, and you need to provide a 3-bedroom unit.
So
Okay.
if we could talk about that for a moment, and please let me know if I have an outdated code section or not. But as I'm looking at the affordable housing requirement, and
it was updated I think in June, April or June. Do you have it's not online, it would be, I believe, or it's not been incorporated into the code. It's probably a couple of months.
if you could please forward that to me, I would really appreciate it, because the code provision that I'm looking at speaks to that, you have to have a 20% set aside, and that if you have 3 affordable housing units or more in your building, you have to have 1 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom.
All right,
Here we only have 2 units, obviously, and from the inception, this was always proposed to be, nothing more than 2 bedrooms.
okay, I'll send you the code requirements, but I do know we talked about this at the DRC meeting. The other issue I have is I just want to clarify, at the DRC meeting, I brought up the new requirements for EV charging stations, and the make-ready stations, the make-ready spaces are actually, it's not just that they can plug it in, it has to be a charging station.
Mm-hmm.
So under the new requirements, which is 5%, which is 15% of your spaces must be pre-wired for electrical vehicle charging stations, and must have those those charging stations. One has to be in place when you build this. So I think you need to show where you're going to provide that first charging station when you build this building, and then the others have to be, one more within 3 years and another within 6 years. So you really need to show the location, and particularly the one that you're going to build right now.
Okay, and the applicant's willing to do that, Janice. And I believe part of that same regulation is that for each of the EV make-ready spaces, they could count as 2 parking spaces, correct?
That's correct.
So we could decrease the number of on-site parking spaces because of this new regulation.
Right.
So we can consider that. If the board has a problem with one of the smaller spaces, they're no longer required as long as we provide EV make-ready spaces.
And just for the board members, that's not a local requirement, that's a state law right now.
And then just, I'm sorry, Janice, one more thing. So the affordable units are not the smallest units. There is a 1-bedroom unit on the first floor that is the smallest unit. It's 784 square feet. That's unit 104. That is smaller than the other
They're
units.
like to like, you know, you're required to provide a 2-bedroom unit. The 2-bedroom unit should be similar in size and scale and level of treatment as and finishes, the fit and finish to the market rate units.
And Paul, you were planning on having the finishes within the interior of all the units be comparable and the same, correct?
Correct. The finishes, the quality will all be the same.
And the number of bathrooms?
We will look at that based on your suggestion.
Okay. And I guess the other item I have is, I know we raised a concern about this side yard setback for the addition. I'm particularly concerned having essentially a 4-story building addition that's only 7 feet from the property line? Because we know that there's going to be a new building put on the adjacent piece of property, probably an office building. So bear in mind that there's probably going to be a fairly large office building right next to your property. And you don't want to have the two buildings so close together that they create, a negative impact. And I think that having that 4-story building only 7 feet away from the property line could be impacted by the future use on the adjacent property, because it's not going to be a 1-story bank.
Okay, Lisa, I assume you're not going to go with a planner now, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, just one thought for him to consider, and I don't know if Paul wants to address it at all, is, part of the rationale for going to 4 stories was the fact that the property slopes back 7 feet, but 7 feet at best would justify an additional story. You're doing a story and a half, and I'm curious as to the justification to go to a 4-story building, because I don't think the 7 feet grade differential gets you a story and a half higher.
Right, the intent was to match the existing floor levels of each of the floors. So even though the existing building is called a 2.5-story building, at the rear it's really a 3.5-story building. We're just matching the existing.
No, I understand in terms of the roof line, but all of this ties into the size of the addition on the south side of the building is what is giving some of us a pause.
Okay.
Bill, any more questions available?
Yes.
I understand that, when it's a 2-story building, I understand the rationale of figuring out whether the office space needs more cars than the residential on the second level, since there's not supposed to be any residential on the first level. Here we have residential on 3 levels that is not really sitting over the office space at all. And the notion that the spaces are suddenly going to be there for the residential units when it's 3 full floors of residential, essentially not even sitting over an area. I mean, the notion of the OR zone is you have offices on the first floor and residential above it. And usually the footprints are the same. Here what you have is you have a situation where the residential has more than 3 times the footprint of the offices. And we're trying to figure out which one controls, and we're treating it as if all those units with 2 cars apiece that almost all of those units, cars are going to be out of the parking lot during the day. And so the concept of how they set up the parking for the OR zone is that there's presumed to be a second floor of residential and a first floor of offices. It doesn't presume that there are 3 floors of residential sitting over not even a full floor of offices, because most of the offices, or a biggest chunk of the offices, are not even under the residential. There seems to be something not rational about the way the parking is calculated to presume that all of those units, most of the 2 cars assigned to all those units are going to be gone during the entire day. Most of the time we hear from developers how people don't even need parking spaces because they're so close to public transportation. But the logic of applying the normal standard when the relative area of residential units to office units is so great creates a concern for me, and whether that requires a change in the way the code is written, I can't imagine why, because we normally only allow the 2-story building. So there's something not right in the combination of the way this is calculated, because I don't see this providing enough parking space for the offices that are shown as well as for the parking, unless unless 2/3 of the families take both of their cars out every day during the office hours. So I have some concerns with the way it's applied when the ratio of offices to residential is so great versus what it would normally be in a 2-story building. So that adds to me another problem on the parking. And as I said, I didn't think there should be any spaces up where there's only an 18-foot wide, 17-foot wide area to back up. So I have some real concerns about the overbuilding of this site. That's it.
Any other board members with questions for the architect? Okay, are there any members of the public who have any questions for the architect? And this is just an opportunity to ask questions of the architect. We'll be continuing the hearing, and there'll be an opportunity for public comment at whenever we continue this too.
Okay, I'm going to unmute all the members of the public. So you are now unmuted, and you have to turn on your microphone if you want to have comments. And tell me if so, give me your name. I mean comments, I mean questions. Any questions?
That's just questions.
I don't.
The cookies might be nice.
Is there anybody there who has a question? Any call-in users? I don't believe we have any questions.
Okay. Lisa, do you want to, our next meeting, September 22nd, do you want to continue this until then?
Yes, let me just check my calendar, but I believe that will work. Yes, please.
Okay,
Okay.
an extension of time for the board to act until that date?
We do.
Okay, so this hearing for the application at 63 Park Street is being continued until our meeting on September 22nd, which presumably will be again conducted virtually. There'll be no further notice of the application, so if you're interested, show up via computer or phone on September 22nd at 7:30.
And the information on how to join the meeting, that's listed on the township's website and on the board's agenda for the night of the hearing?
Correct.
Yes.
Just making sure for any member of the public that's listening, that's how they can get the instructions. Okay, thank you all. We will see you on September 22nd at 7:30 p.m. without further notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you then. Okay, the next application is that of Harold and Kelley Reynolds for property at 115 Lorraine Avenue. This is an application to erect a 6-foot perimeter wooden fence on the property. The property has frontage on Lorraine Avenue and Haddon Place. Property is in the R1 one-family zone, is designated on the township tax maps as block 3606 lot 7. The applicants have applied for a variance from Montclair Code section 37-27A1 to permit a fence height of 6 feet, whereas the ordinance only permits a maximum height of 4.5 feet for fences erected in front of the extreme rear corners of the principal building. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
So,
Taxes are paid and the notice is in order. I'm trying to make Mr. Trevenin a panelist. Oh, that didn't work. What just happened? Everybody just, all my attendees just left, unless I think you know what, or did I accidentally make you presenters? Okay, yeah, I did it. The Lynch, Miss Lynch, are you here for an application? Mr. Lynch?
I'm here as a person to comment or question on this
Okay.
proposal.
I'm gonna make you, I accidentally made you a presenter. I don't know how I did that. All right, so,
I think we have the Reynolds.
yeah.
And we have Mr. Trevenin listed as a panelist also.
I don't,
Cal, are you there?
He's
Cal?
trying to mute himself.
all right, Cal, yes.
Muted right now.
Let me see if I can.
Cal, you're unmuted. Okay. Who is going to be part of your application?
The only person having testified is Mr. Harold Reynolds.
Okay, I have him.
And we're also, I'm going to make an initial comment that we are proposing to amend the application this evening. And this is after consultation with Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds. And I think what we're proposing would make this a conforming circumstance.
Okay.
Well,
Let me-
Cal, why don't you give your appearance and we can go from there.
All right, this is Calvin Trevenin. I'm actually appearing this evening in substitution for my law partner, Alan Tremulak, who has a conflict in Caldwell. And I'm appearing this evening on behalf of Harold and Kelley Reynolds, who are the owners of the subject property. If I may.
You may.
What?
Go ahead.
Thank you. What the Reynolds are proposing this evening is the following. First of all, and as the board can see from what's been submitted and also from the memorandum that's been put together by Ms. Talley, this is a through lot. The actual frontage of the house per se is on Lorraine Avenue, but the lot goes all the way through to Haddon Place. And the original application, we would propose to amend so that the fencing around the perimeter of what we'll call the Haddon Place frontage, we would amend to make it conforming a fence of 4.5 feet in height. I think what would help also is if you look at figure number 2 in the memorandum, and that figure indicates the following, that the rear, the portion of the lot that fronts on Haddon is heavily wooded. And I would ask you to look at the 2 adjacent homes on either side fronting on Haddon. And I would suggest to you that if we drew a line parallel to the rear lot lines of those two adjacent properties, it would in effect go right at the wood line, the wooded line,
Oh, okay.
between the wooded area and the home of the applicants. So what we would propose, however, is because the applicant wishes to enclose that Haddon frontage with fencing, conforming fencing of 4.5 feet in height, that the fence would go all the way down the side of those Haddon boundaries, all the way from that proposed line at the wood line. So it would be, in my opinion, conforming fencing. In fact, perhaps you might even say slightly more conforming fencing, because the adjacent two properties, their rear of their homes are actually slightly further towards Haddon Place than the line I'm proposing. But the idea would be then to have a fence going down from that line on both sides and on the frontage with Haddon of 4.5 feet high. And if I may, in order to confirm what I've just said and to put testimony, of course, on the record with regard to this application, I would ask that Mr. Harold Reynolds be sworn in.
Guess I get sworn, put my hands up.
Mr. Reynolds, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, sir.
State your name and address, please.
Harold Craig Reynolds, 115 Lorraine Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Mr. Reynolds, I think you've listened to what I was explaining with regard to the proposed application and amended application for this evening. And I would ask you what you just heard me speak to. Does that conform with what you and your wife are now proposing in lieu of the original application where that request was for 6-foot fencing? Now the revised request would be for 4.5-foot conforming fencing.
Yeah, absolutely. To explain how we came up on 6, the neighbors to the left have a 6-foot fence. So we just thought that's what it was, but no problem with the 4.5 at all. We'd love to conform to whatever you guys have been asking. So that's good. You're great.
So Cal, if you're going to amend the application so that all of the fencing, let me just get rid of this.
What would happen with Janice would be, there's an existing chain link fence that does go all the way down to Haddon Place.
Right.
That chain link fence, of course, would be removed, and what would then be inserted would be a conforming 4.5-foot fence. And as I said, that fence then would be in the frontage along the boundary of the property on Haddon Place, and then up the side yards at 4.5 feet, all the way up to the end of the fence line. And then thereafter, and frankly, I don't know that it's necessarily part of tonight's application, but of course, as you know, in the way the ordinance is drafted, anything from the back plane of the principal structure, and this is, of course, is a one-family home. So let me speak to it from the Lorraine side, if I will. If you'll allow me then, from when the back plane of the house for a portion of the property, they would be allowed to then construct that same fence at 6 feet in height, actually 7 feet in height, because the ordinance talks in terms of 7 feet, but I'm not sure even that the client wishes to, or has indicated that they would go to 7 feet in that area. And then just to clarify that if you look at this property from the Haddon direction, and you look at the two adjacent homes on either side, if you took the rear plane of those homes, and if you look at what we're proposing, which is that the wooded line slightly exceeds the rear line of those adjacent homes. But what's being proposed this evening then is that from the wooded line back down towards Haddon, that that fencing would all be a conforming 4.5 feet in height.
Okay, so what I show here on the screen in blue, is that where you're proposing the 6-foot fence? Roughly.
I'm trying to follow. Okay, she's gonna expand this for me.
I'm following your plan. This is a 6-foot fence.
Yeah.
6-foot fence from the side of the house and extending along your property line, essentially to where the trees are, which is roughly where the backyard starts of the adjacent house.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's correct.
So, okay, so you're amending the application, so the 6-foot fence will be where I show the blue here, roughly.
Correct.
And then everything else going to the street would be a conforming 4.5-foot fence. So
Right.
the variance is really just to provide a 6-foot fence where the blue is located.
Right.
Okay.
And one clarification, it's not gonna go like all the way around the whole property, a big fence. It's gonna go to, when you get to the Lorraine part up the front, there'll be no fences up front. That's not gonna be all the way around the front of the house. Am I
Yeah, no,
correct?
I see, according to your plan, it cuts across towards the rear part of the house.
I'm speaking for two here, so you know I have to be on point. I have to make sure I got this. She's giving me the answers here. All right?
And Harold, I think this is Calvin. I think it would be appropriate just for the board to hear that why you don't wish to leave that wooded area unfenced. And,
Well,
and I think you have a good reason for that. So why don't you just speak to that, please?
Sure. When we first got the property, that was basically a beer garden hangout place for teenagers. And we just feel like if we continue to not put that fence there and bring it forward, it continues to be that, because we still find beer bottles, hard liquor and stuff in that back area. So we don't want to create a garden back there. So we feel like that's really the main thing. And you'll constantly see them stopping, parking, hanging out there. So that's kind of one of the things, be a little more of a deterrent. But the fence we have back there now, you just climb over, walk through, whatever, and they hang out in the middle of the night. So that's it.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
I want to understand what's being proposed, because we have to do a fairly specific condition on where we're going to allow the deviation. And there's been two things talked of. One is that rear lot line of the two bordering houses on Haddon, and the other is the edge of the woods. And those are slightly different locations. And do you have a preference for one of those as to where you would start the 6-foot fence?
The trees.
Go ahead, you can speak up.
Probably at the trees, not the, but yeah, probably at the trees, just to have like I don't know if that makes more sense to me, but.
We haven't thought that part all the way through, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay, and then in the front where it goes up to the house, the drawing you submitted with the application shows it going, what I'll call on the one side, it's where the rear, it's not the full rear corner, but that corner of the house on the east side. And then on the other side, you're going up to what I'll call the front corner of the main part of the house. Is that where you want the fence?
I actually, yeah, so we ended up like that little corner, actually, there's like the stone, like a little patio. That we wanted to come back slightly to the next, back, because that's our sunroom. And what we didn't realize when we had done the initial plan, it would be more even and in line with the other side. When we first had the guy come out for the fence, we hadn't sat in that room. And now that we've sat in the room, we realize that that line on the, I think that's the east side.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is shown on that plan is where you want the fence to stop as you come towards Lorraine?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. Where that blue line is, correct.
Okay. Mr. Fleischer, do you have any questions?
Just one, actually. The drawings keep showing a pond. And
there's no pond.
My question is, where is the pond relative to the end of the 4.5-foot fence versus the woods? I mean, unfortunately, that's all it's shown there, but I don't know where the woods are relative to the pond.
Yeah.
I don't know where the fence is relative to the pond. I would think if we're trying to keep people away, a 4.5-foot fence may or may not keep people out. So I just say that to you. And I didn't know if there was going to be another interior fence that sort of prevented them from getting past the woods line if they did get in there. And
well, that's why we were looking at a 6-foot fence. We thought it'd be a little harder to climb over, but we didn't want to cause any ruckus, and we realized 4.5 is where it was at. As far as addressing the pond and where that might be, the pond we had to take out. It was too much of a mess. And so we took that out. There is no pond there. It's just grass. The kids are playing soccer, football, you name it on there. It's a neighborhood hangout area. And so it's just going to be it's all grass.
Okay, so let me just
fill it in. It's all grass. And then at the back end of that pond, so to speak, where the circle would be, that's a wooded area that starts that's a little bit beyond that. So that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it does. What I'm trying to find out is, I'm actually asking you a different question. I'm assuming that people are still going to get into the woods. Maybe that's wrong. So I'm asking whether or not you want a 6-foot fence at some point that separates your recreational part of your property from the woods. You can put a gate in it, you can put a door in it. I'm just trying to find out if you want a 6-foot fence or a 7-foot fence, whatever you want, that actually cuts across your property to sort of isolate the woods from your recreational area.
Well, the woods is not as thick as it is on the picture anymore. We've thinned that out, thinned trees out. So it's not necessarily a wooded area. It's an area where you can gather and hang out with the space.
Yeah, so, yeah, Joe, I mean,
you don't necessarily need that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming where the kids gather is in the woods. Is that correct?
It's in the woods in the back.
So
next
you
to
don't
the
want to be able to
area.
see into the woods, because I think it would be less of a deterrent. If we had a second fence, then we can't see them, and I think it would be less of a deterrent for kids to come in.
Can I see the area that you annotated before, Janice, that showed where the 6-foot fence was going to be?
I think I removed it, but I'll do it again.
Okay.
Do you want me to do it on the aerial or on the plan?
Do it on the plan, because that'll be easier for me to understand and maybe to understand the point I'm making.
Okay. So I believe the 6-foot fence would be here.
And then goes, yeah, keep going.
And I think where, if the woods really is, the wooded area actually kind of begins where the pond ends.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
So probably the 6-foot fence would go about here.
Okay, on both sides, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
And what I'm asking is a simple question. Do you now want a 6-foot fence that connects those two open ends?
You're saying go straight across.
That's what I'm trying to find out. If you'd like that, that may technically require a variance, but I'd rather give it to you if that's what you'd like to do. I don't want you to have to come back later on and say, oh, I forgot I wanted a 6-foot fence that really went across from east to west.
Yeah, no, we don't want to cut that property off. That's why we're just hoping that, we were gonna initially ask for the fence back at where the red line is, where the 4.5 is gonna be. And we'll just, that open right there is fine. So
Yeah,
we'll 6 and then straight down to 4.5. And
Yeah, they want to be able to see into the woods is.
yeah, the open space.
And Janice, just so where you drew the line on the east side of the house, my understanding from what they said is they want it where that red line is, not forward because it's.
No, I think they wanted it forward to enclose the sunroom, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. They wanted to move it a little bit forward because this is where the sunroom is.
This one here, he was talking
I
about.
know, she's talking about something different.
Oh, you guys are talking about two different. All right.
So in either case, you want to be able to look into the woods. You're not looking to protect your privacy with a 6-foot fence that separates the woods from your backyard. Let's use it.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we want to be able to see the whole property down. And
Okay, but we still need the variance, I guess, Bill, for the sections forward of the rear of the house?
Right, yes. Okay, and just so, and where Janice is drawing it, we have to figure out how to define the edge of the wood, but by the house where she's drawn it is where you want it?
Yes.
I mean,
It's in line with the other side, Bill, that they showed on their sketch.
I don't want to inadvertently do something they don't want to do is.
I'm just gonna take a screenshot of this.
Yeah.
So we have that.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
None at the moment.
And Mr. Church, you have any questions?
Yes. My question is, we're amending this application from a variance for a 6-foot fence along Haddon Place to a 6-foot fence going down to the back of the building of their home on either side. Is that correct?
correct.
And we're gonna have, wait a minute, and we're gonna have a 4'5" fence going along Haddon Place.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because initially we were looking at the 6-foot fence along Haddon Place, but we're adjusting to,
Yes, I understand. I got you.
yeah.
Okay, Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions?
No questions. No questions.
Okay, Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and I don't have any further questions. Okay, is there anything, Mr. Trevenin, Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, anything any of you want to add before we, I have to do the public. Are there any members of the public? We do have a member of the public who has either comments or questions or anything you want to say about the application as it's proposed to be amended?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Would you state your name and address, please?
I'm Melissa Newer. I live at 121 Haddon Place.
All right, if you're going to make a comment, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
All right, proceed.
Hello, back neighbors.
Hey, how are you?
Whatever fence you put up, we'll be looking at it a lot. So there's our interest. We're really happy to know that you're amending your proposal to 4.5 feet. That's grand. And I just have a couple comments. One is we've lived on Haddon Place for 30 years. And I have to say, the only critters that I've ever seen going over the fence in either direction have been raccoons. And there have been many fewer of them since you took the pond out. But I've never seen kids in there. A question for you, and that is, according to the documents, the pictures we're looking at, I can't tell whether you're planning to put the fence on the property line at the curb on Haddon, or whether you're going to follow the line of the existing chain link fence. I certainly hope it's the latter.
Yeah, we're following the existing chain link. Yeah.
Super, that's great. Maybe some landscaping, whatever on that. Will be
Yeah,
really nice.
clean it all up. We're gonna clean it all up.
That'll be super. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other members of the public who have either comments or questions on the application?
I do.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay,
Would you, hold on, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
But I'm gonna pitch in anyway.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you. What's your name?
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
My name's Tim Bray. I'm at 109 Lorraine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Bray. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
Okay, proceed, Mr. Bray.
Hi. So I'm adjacent to the Reynolds on the east side. So I'd be affected by the 6-foot fence. And I would just to say that I have no problems with that fence. One thing that isn't mentioned is that due to the topography, my property is about 10 or 12 feet higher than their property. And the grade rises maybe at a 45-degree angle, maybe 5 or 6 feet within the first 5 or 6 feet onto my property. So even the 6-foot fence there is basically invisible to me. It would help shield for them some of that steep slope area where nothing seems to grow and it's heavily wooded. So the Reynolds have done an exceptional job with their renovations and have been good neighbors. And of all the possible outcomes that property could have went through with developers and subdivisions or people who just were doing a quick job to flip it, they really did, it was like a dream house for them, and it shows with the kind of work they did. And as a neighbor having to look at it, I appreciate it. And I think it's reasonable after investing all this time and heart into their dream house that they should be able to have some privacy and have a reasonable fence. It's unfortunate that driving down Haddon, people can basically look right into their backyard. Even with a 4.5-foot fence, a SUV driver can look right into their backyard. There's no sidewalk on Haddon, and their property line probably sits 10 feet or more from the curb. And a 6-foot fence that would actually shield during wintertime the street view of my property, which is adjacent to it. So I was actually in favor of that, but I understand the other Haddon person's comments. They're looking at it from a more closer perspective. So for them, they've already abandoned that request anyway, but I thought that was not unreasonable, especially in light of all the work they've done on the property and how thoughtful they've been in the work that they've done. So I just was going to speak out in support of their application.
Nice, Tim.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Well earned praise.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who have comments on the application or questions about the application?
I have one question. I have a question.
Is there somebody new?
Yeah, I hear you. What is your name?
My name is Jim Lynch. I live at 101 Haddon.
Okay.
Can you ask your question?
Sure.
Yeah, I just asked the 4.5-foot fence that you're proposing now. What is that going to be constructed out of? Is that going to be a wooden fence, or is it going to be made of some other materials? And it'd be solid, I assume. So basically, kind of what we're looking at, but shorter.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was my question. Thank you. Although, yeah, that was my question.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who either have comments or questions about the application?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, are you going to ask a question or make a comment?
Both.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I sure do.
Name and address, please.
Evan Cutler, 139 Haddon Place.
Go ahead, Mr. Cutler.
I just want to ask the Reynolds where I'm going to go now to drink my hard liquor and my beer. And to be perfectly honest, I've lived on the block for almost 18 years and am a night owl, and I've never seen anybody partying in those woods. But I do think that, with the fence of 4.5 feet, it will give people an opportunity to throw things over the fence, which I know, as a child, I enjoyed doing. But I just want to say, speaking from many people in the neighborhood, we really do miss that pond. Generations of kids on Haddon Place learned how to ice skate on that pond because someone who lived there for decades opened that backyard to the entire neighborhood, and they actually people on the block actually kept their skates in a little hut in the back, and they had lights, and it was probably for 60 or 70 years that pond was enjoyed by everybody. And I actually went back when I was doing the history of Haddon Place and found that pond predates any development on Haddon or Lorraine. So my guess is it's a spring-fed pond it's been there at least since 1890.
Wow.
And I really missed the wood ducks that had nested there. And I would always leave 5 minutes early for my bus every morning in the city so I could bird watch along that block. I said, those trees that used to be there really attracted some spring migrants, and it was a great place for birding. So I'm just saying I miss the pond. I'm just being a little sentimental right here. But I love what this outcome, and it's great that we don't have to see a 6-foot fence there. So much gratitude.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public with comments or questions on the application?
I think that's it. There's no more comments, no more questions?
Okay, Mr. Trevenant, Mr. or Mrs. Reynolds, do you have anything you want to say before we discuss and vote on the application?
This is Trevenant. Thank you for your attention. Nothing further, and nice to see you all.
Good to hear you. Okay,
Thank you for your time, and appreciate it. And I think the people that went before us helped us out because they wore you out. They're on quite a while. So thank you.
Okay, we'll start discussion with Mr. Fleischer.
I'm in favor of the application with the modifications that have been proposed by the applicant. And I assume we can figure out how to get that into the text of the approval. So I'm in favor of the application.
Okay, Mr. Moore.
I'm in favor of the application. I don't see it to be a detriment to the neighbors or a hardship to anyone else. So I am certainly in favor. Enjoy.
Okay, Mr. Church.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the amended application to the 4.5 foot fence along Lorraine, Haddon Place, and the 6-foot fences going up the side.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCulloch.
I'm also in favor of the proposal. I think it will enhance the property and the neighborhood.
Okay, Ms. Harris.
I'm in favor of the amended application.
Okay, Mr. Vieira.
I'm also in favor of the application, and I certainly appreciate the comments from the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also in favor of the application. I think I was very concerned when I got it in terms of having the non-conforming fence extend all the way to Haddon. I think the modified application is a reasonable addressing this situation with a through lot that has no place where you could put a conforming fence on, a fence that exceeds 4.5 feet and height, I think that is modified as proposed. I think the condition should be that the fence extends from the front corners of the house as shown on what Janice drew, and then down to the edge of the wood line. And before the fence is installed, the applicant mark out the proposed location of the portion of the fence that would run parallel to Hatton Place, and have someone either from the planning office or the construction office verify that that approximates where the edge of the woods is. But as shown on this diagram, it would be approximately where the edge of the pond is, because that area is not currently wooded, where they filled in the pond. So any further discussion by board members? And if not, does someone want to make a motion?
Make approval of the application with the conditions as stated by the chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
No.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Good luck to your fence. Enjoy your house and welcome to Montclair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. All right.
Good night.
Thank you.
Do
Appreciate
you want
that.
My pleasure.
Okay.
to, do you want to press on and do the last application?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Next application is that of Douglas and Jane Farrell for property at 179 Alexander Avenue. This is an application for a variance to construct in addition to the existing dwelling. The property is in the R11 family zone, and it's designated on the township tax maps as Lot 24 and Block 2801. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B1 to permit a minimum front yard setback of less than the average front yard setback of the existing buildings, and a variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45C4 to permit a maximum building width greater than 65% of the width of the lot. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
Yes, they are.
And is Mr. Farrell present?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Yep, I made him a panelist.
Okay, Mr. Farrell, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
Doug Farrell, 179 Alexander Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay, do you want to explain what you're proposing to do to the house?
Yeah, sure. Explain a little bit, and then Paul Sionis is on as well, who the architect for the work. So what we're looking to do is we've got a screened-in porch off the east side of our house, which we're looking to. We love the porch, so we want to keep the look and feel of the porch, but we're looking to convert it to a four-season porch and expand the living space on the first floor. And then we want to add a second level above the porch off the bedroom upstairs as an office. Been doing quite a bit of working from home lately and need some office space, so we thought it'd be a good place to put the office. We are also looking to add a half bath on the first floor. We don't have a half bath on the first floor in the back. I don't think that that's part of the variance, but Paul can kind of talk to that a little bit more. And just I guess a quick note, we did talk to a few of our neighbors, in particular the neighbors on the east facing side of the house, which would be looking at the addition that we're looking to do with the office. I don't believe they're able to join tonight, but they're fully aware and supportive of what we're looking to do. Obviously, you can probably take my word for it, but you know, if we want to hear from them, they can potentially come on at a later date if needed.
Hey, Mr. Farrell, you have anything else?
That's it. Paul, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Sionis, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Paul Sionis. My address is 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay, and you're the architect, and we approved of you a few applications ago, so you can proceed.
Okay. This is an application for 179 Alexander Avenue. It's block 2801, lot 24. I have a series of 15 slides that I'll show to explain what the application is. The first slide is Google Maps aerial view, shows the subject property, and as you can see, it's on the north side of Alexander Avenue, between Norwood Avenue just to the east and Valley Road to the west. Next slide, please. This is the Montclair zoning map. The property is located in the R180 zone district. It's also within the Upper Montclair commuter area potential historic resource. And the Upper Montclair commuter area was built from 1900 to 1929, and it's a distinct development to house the commuter population. And as such, the property was reviewed by the Montclair HPC at their July meeting. Next slide, please. This slide is the property survey map. The property is 70 feet wide and 200 feet deep. It's improved with a 2.5-story wood frame dwelling that was constructed around 1919. There's also an existing asphalt driveway on the east side of the property and a swimming pool at the rear center of the lot. The property slopes from west to east, or from left to right. And then the land continues to slope down onto the adjoining lot to the east, down to a branch of the Third River. So this is the property survey map from 2018. Next slide, please. This is from the Montclair tax map. And as you can see on the tax map, I've outlined the subject property, the Farrell's property in orange. So as you can see, the adjoining property to the east or to the right, lot 23, is fairly wide. It's 183.7 feet wide at the front as compared to the Farrell's, which is 70 feet. However, the westerly portion of lot 23 is bisected by a tributary or branch of the Third River, where nothing could be constructed, and this area is presently covered with large trees. So this is the land adjacent to where the Farrell wish to improve their existing screen porch. So the next slide, please. So next slide, number 5, is a photo that we took back in March. This is the existing front of the house, or the south elevation, as seen from standing on Alexander Avenue. So there's an existing 1-story screen porch on the right side or the east side of the house, and that's the subject of this application. Next slide, please. This next slide is a Google Earth street view photo taken in 2018. And in this image, you can see that the western portion of the adjoining lot to the east is heavily wooded and cannot be developed because of the existing tributary of the Third River. So the driveway shown in this photo is the Farrell's driveway, and it's very close to the common property line between this property and the property to the east. And you can see the existing screen porch on the right side of the house in this photo. Next slide, please. So the proposal, as Doug Farrell just mentioned, is to convert that existing screen porch into a sunroom, a 4-season sunroom or year-round sunroom, and then construct a 2nd-story home office or study up above that. Also, there's no powder room on the 1st floor, so part of the application is to construct a small 1st floor powder room addition on the northwest corner of the house. And the reason we're here is that the existing house exceeds 65% of the lot width by 1.42 feet or 17 inches. And this proposal maintains the existing building width. So the proposal is to replace that screen porch, which is over an existing masonry garage. So the proposal is to replace that screen porch with the year-round sunroom and a home office above, right on the existing footprint, not make it any larger. Next slide, please. Next slide is the 1st floor plan. And you can see on the right, it says the screen porch sits above an existing garage. So there's existing 1-car masonry garage. Screen porch sits on top of that, and the screen porch will be converted or reconstructed into a year-round sunroom on the exact same footprint. And then the top left, number 2, it says a 1-story, 4'9" by 5'6" addition for a powder room is proposed. So we're not proposing to make the house any wider, but it exceeds the requirement for a house to be no more than 65% of the lot width by 1.42 feet currently. And even with this proposed work, it'll still exceed that 65% by 1.42 feet. And to repeat, we're not increasing the footprint at all. Next slide, number 9. So number 9 is the second floor plan, and that shows that the proposal is to build a study above that sunroom at the second floor, and the study will be connected to an existing bedroom on the second floor. Again, this will have the exact same footprint as the sunroom and garage below. Next slide, please. Slide 10, that's the proposed front elevation. As we've said, the first floor screen porch will be converted into a year-round sunroom with the new second-story study or home office above. The addition is to have a flat roof surrounded by decorative wood railings, and there'll be painted composite pilasters and composite panels on each of the 3 facades of the new construction. And there'll be an abundance of casement and fixed windows on all 3 sides of this new construction. The Historic Commission reviewed the proposal. They suggested that the detailing on the addition be simplified. The panels that were showing under the windows they think should be simplified. So we agreed to the suggestion. We'll revise the detailing on the exterior, and then our intent is to reissue the drawings for the Historic Commission subcommittee review after this zoning board process. Next slide, please, slide 11. So slide 11 is the east elevation. This is as shown from the wooded area next door. So again, the same theme as the front elevation. A lot of glass, the decorative railing on the top, the flat roof. But again, the HPC had asked us to simplify the detailing around the windows, which we will. Next slide, please, number 12. Slide 12 is the, on the left is the north elevation, which is the elevation that faces the rear yard. And you can see the 2 stories above the existing garage on the left side of that north elevation there. And then you can also see the proposed 1-story powder room addition on the right side of that north elevation. So it's a 1-story powder room addition with flat roof, the same decorative railing surrounding the roof of that powder room addition. And then the right side is a west elevation, and you could see the 1-story powder room addition pretty much where Janice's cursor was. Next slide, please. Slide 13. Slide 13, that's the existing floor plans. It shows that existing screen porch on the first floor and a large deck across the rear of the house. The floor plan on the right is the existing second floor plan with the 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Next slide. The slide 14 of the existing elevations, and this is similar to what you saw in the photographs. The top left is the front elevation as it is now. Top right is the elevation as seen from the wooded area next door. The bottom left is the north elevation, which is the view from the rear yard of this property, and then bottom right is the existing west elevation. Next slide. So this basically, variance is requested in order to continue the existing width of the house, which exceeds the 65% width by 1.42 feet or 17 inches. The applicants, as they stated, they seek to replace the existing screen porch with a sunroom and a study or home office above the study in the existing footprint. So looking at planning arguments, there's a hardship to the applicant created by the existence of this lawfully existing structure that was built in 1919, and that the lot size is narrow. It's deficient by 10 feet in width by what is currently required. So the property is 70 feet wide but the current zoning requires an 80-foot lot width. So an exceptional situation is created sufficient to justify the zoning ordinance. There's no intention to expand the existing footprint. And there was case law from 1991 that the existing foundation was considered a unique feature of the land that caused practical difficulty, and a denial of a variance would result in that existing foundation to a building being wasted. So in this application, there's an existing garage and foundation below the current screen porch. So the intent is to reconstruct that screen porch, replace it with a 4-season room and a second-story home office or study above that. And then under the C2 argument, the variance could be granted without substantial to the public good. So the applicant proposes the sunroom and second-story addition, the same footprint as the existing screen porch above the existing garage. 2-story addition is proposed, but the existing house is taller. The existing house is 2.5 stories. The closest neighboring house to the east has the large, heavily wooded side yard setback due to the existing tributary of the Third River. There'll be no negative impact to the neighbor or to any others on the street or in this neighborhood. The variance will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan, as this variance relates to this specific piece of property, one that is 10 feet narrower than zoning currently requires. The application will promote a desirable visual environment. The HPC reviewed the application and found that by simplifying some of the exterior detailing with the large expanse of glass that's shown and the decorative railing surrounding the flat roof, this will be an attractive addition to this home. They'll be in keeping with the variety of architectural styles found within this Upper Montclair commuter area potential historic resource. So that concludes my testimony.
Mr. Fleischer, do you have any questions?
I'll begin by saying that I'm in favor of this application. I don't have a question. I have a question about how the 65% is calculated when you have these various angles and everything else. What is the width of the property what is the width of the house itself physically?
That is in the zoning chart. There's a calculation on slide 7. So building width 65%, lot width is parallel to the street, is according to the ordinance. So the lot width is 70 feet, taking 65% of that allows for a 45.5 foot wide house. Measuring the house from left to right, from west to east, it's 46.92 feet. So therefore, it doesn't comply with the 65%. So the front property line is on an angle, but in this case, the house follows that same angle.
So it's not the diagonal relative to the street. It's the basic width of the house.
Correct. Which basically is close to being parallel with that front angle of the front property line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moore, do you have any questions?
My question was just answered. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
No question.
Okay, Mr. McCulloch, do you have any questions?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Ms. Harris, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Sionis, you kind of discussed the Historic Preservation Commission recommendations, but did it somewhat generally. They had 6 recommendations. Are any of those an issue for you?
No, we have no issue with their recommendations. We discussed it at the Historic Commission, and basically what it results in is simplifying the detailing around the perimeter of the new addition on the exterior. They had as I said, they thought we could simplify the paneling under the windows and the proportion of the columns from the first floor to the second floor.
Are there any members of the public who have questions, comments, anything you want to say about the application?
We have one member of the public, and Mr. Horrigan, if you want to speak, you just muted yourself. If you want to speak, you need to unmute yourself. I don't believe we have any comments or questions.
Okay, I'll give one last chance. Are there any members of the public who have comments or questions? Now is your last chance to speak up on the application. Okay, Mr. Sionis, Mr. Farrell, do you have anything you want to add before we discuss and vote on the application?
No.
Okay, we'll start discussion with Mr. Moore.
I'm in favor of the application.
Mr. Church,
I also would vote in favor of this application.
Mr. McCullough.
I'm also in favor. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Okay, Ms. Harris.
I'm also in favor. They're keeping the existing footprint for the most part, and they're dealing with an existing non-conformant, so I would be okay with it.
Okay, Mr. Vieira.
I'm also in favor of the application.
Mr. Fleischer.
I'm also in favor of the application. It's simply a minor deviance and deviation, and I think since they're keeping the existing footprint, I'm totally in favor of the application as submitted.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of the application. I think they, since it's not increasing the width of the house variance, it's a small addition to the house. So it's not going to result in a substantial detriment to the public good or a substantial impairment to the zone plan. I think they should be required to adhere to the conditions imposed by the Historic Preservation Condition and go back to the commission or a subcommittee commission to show them that they have done that. Any further discussion among board members? And if not, does someone want to make a motion?
Move approval of the application as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, go to your addition.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. And we need a motion to adjourn we get a whole month off this time.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 See everyone in September as the song goes.
Take care.
Ready. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye, thank you.